Okay, folks, had an interesting question raised on Twitter today. What would constitute success for the Rippaverse? Because you could try and tie success to the money, but there's no guarantee that Isom number 2 is going to generate as much money, as much revenue as Isom number 1 will. It might if everybody who bought at least one copy of Isom number 1 bought a copy of Isom number 2 and perhaps bought the same quantity of merchandise that they did for Isom number 1, then you might actually see it achieve another record in terms of its pre-order sales. Maybe you'll see it reach 4 million or more. But what if it doesn't? Does that necessarily mean that Isom or the Rippaverse in itself is not a success? I don't think so, because most comic books just by and by experience a second issue slump. So I don't want to establish any kind of long-term success goal that says that the Rippaverse has to make millions of dollars on every single comic that it outputs. That to me would not necessarily be fair. What I do think would be fair is to look at perhaps the rate of output for the comics and to see what kind of competition it can maintain against the big two who are cranking out issues every month. Now, my feeling is that to compete against a comic book company, two big comic book companies that are pumping out monthly titles, you yourself need to be pumping out monthly titles, or at least you need to be pumping out a title monthly so that interest in your company is maintained in both the short term and the long term. On top of that, I'm looking backwards into the past and I'm trying to see what the more successful comic book companies who have tried to compete with DC and Marvel have done over time. And what it has looked like to me is that the most successful attempt, although now it's more and more looking like a failed attempt, the most successful in recent years attempt at creating a coherent comic book universe that competes with Marvel and DC has been the latest iteration of Valiant Comics. Valiant Entertainment kind of set itself a benchmark that it would not try to overpublish from the very beginning. When it started in about 2012, it put forward 4 titles. It was Exo Man of War, Bloodshot, Harbinger, and Archer and Armstrong. Those 4 titles became the core Valiant titles, and then they would rotate titles out and rotate new titles in. Titles like The Valiant, or Unity, or Divinity, or other titles, whether in mini-series or macro-series form, Shadow Man, Psylords, things like that, so that they were always publishing around 4 comics a month. Now, 4 comics a month, that would be like 4 22 or 24-page comics, which would amount to a single 88 or 96-page comic every month, if that's how we're going to count all those together. So that is the equivalent of an Isom number 1. That is the equivalent of what I think is going to be Isom number 2 as well. I believe Eric July has said that all of the comic books that Rippaverse will publish will likely be 90-plus pages. So if you say 90-plus pages as the equivalent of 4 regular comic book issues printed all in the same month, then you've got kind of a one-to-one comparison there between Valiant and Rippaverse. The only difference being is that Rippaverse would be publishing, say, 4 consecutive issues of the title, of a single title in one month, whereas Valiant was publishing 4 different monthly issues within a month. So my feeling is, if Rippaverse is going to be a success, I would like to see its momentum carry them to the point at which they are putting out one 90-plus page comic book every single month. And whether that is, they can break it up however they want, but as long as they are putting out one 96-page comic or 90-plus page comic every month, that to me would say that this comic book company has the momentum to succeed. It would have at least reached the goalpost that Valiant Comics did at one time. Now, unfortunately, Valiant Comics, the interest is bled off in the company to the point where they're only publishing like maybe one title a month. But, hey, it was a good run. So that's kind of like what I would like to see. And I think that would be a more fair standard of success than expecting from, first and foremost, for DC and Marvel to just collapse under the weight of Rippaverse's success. I mean, good luck with that happening. I mean, they still have their movie franchises and their partnerships with the other broadcasting platforms like HBO Max and Disney Plus. You're not going to see DC and Marvel just completely vanish from the scene. But what you could see is another comic book universe, this new comic book universe, rise up to compete alongside them at a productive rate. And so that is what I think that, whether the numbers continue to hold or whether the numbers fall into the more of the 1 million to 2 million range or something, or maybe the numbers will skyrocket and we'll see even more success from Rippaverse. But I'm just saying that so long as Rippaverse can sustain a momentum of one 96-page comic every month, that to me would look like a successful comic book venture to me. And I don't know, you might have more ambition for them than I do, but I'd be curious to know your thoughts on that, so feel free to reply. So that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to try and give a kind of standard of success to look forward to for Rippaverse, so that people, there are going to be the people who are the detractors who are going to say, it's like, oh, well, Marvel and DC are still around, so I guess Rippaverse wasn't the success Eric I thought it was going to be. Like, come on. Nobody really expected Marvel and DC were going to be going anywhere. I mean, they've still got each of them still has at least one or two good universe reboots in them. And then there's the matter of, well, he didn't get 3.7 million this time. He only got, 2.6 million. I guess he's not a success after all. Well, the numbers may not be what they should be or could have been, but still, if they're enough to sustain a 96-page book every month, those are good enough numbers in my book to at least place him on the competitive tier with the big two, because that's where Valiant was when they started. So if he can maintain that same level of output, I would call that a success, or at least success level 1, and then we'll see where it goes from there. I'm Mike Partika. Thank you for watching. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, and I will talk to you later.